Played out to Socrates. Socrates still trying to get the opening. Oh, Socrates! Whoa!
And there it is. The crazy gang have beaten the Culture Club.
Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me? Maggie Thatcher, your boys took the hell of a beating. Your boys took the hell of a beating.
Welcome to module subsection 1.03, 1979-80 revisited, plucked from the goal shoulder bag of our boys took your boys took hell of a beating. Rather, Dave, we move on. A couple of weeks. TV footage is still quite sparse at this point in time. ITV are still suffering through the technician strike, and the BBC have sent the cameras to Anfield and Villa Park on this particular day. There's not much footage of the game at Villa Park. We will touch on that towards the end. But main focus, our featured game, as Jimmy Hill would be saying, is Liverpool versus Coventry City.
It is, and it's a shame that there's been no documentaries about the technician strike like the miners' strike. Clearly not as significant in the great scheme of things. But one of the first to take on Thatcher. You've got to give him credit for that.
Oh, totally. We will touch on this because there's a great kind of like side story that I spotted as far as the technician strike goes. And we've still got about 3 modules to get through to get to ITV's cameras kicking back in. So we'll leave that for one of the modules to come. But yeah, it's great. It's great. Liverpool Coventry. Liverpool, magnificent as we saw in module subsection 1.01, the Charity Shield in August, dismantling a talented Arsenal side packed with massive amounts of star names. Perhaps Liverpool have maybe kind of like, I don't know, believed their own hype after the 79 Charity Shield, Dave. 4 games in. Not the set of results that they would have hoped. Game cancelled on the opening day because of structural difficulties at Molineux. They have a game in hand. But the first 4 games of the season, I think it's 1 win, 2 draws and a defeat. I think they're 4 points adrift of the leaders at this point in time. Not a great start. They're slow out of the blocks, which is surprising given just how mesmeric they were at Wembley on a sunny day in August.
Clearly they've peaked too early. It's going to be a poor season for Liverpool, this, obviously.
The wheels are falling off, the end of the empire, cracks in the foundations, etc. Dave,
I wonder how much actually having that first game of the season knocked off was disrupting, because you build yourself up to that first game, didn't you? You have all your pre-season. It's very methodical. Bob Paisley and the boot room would know exactly what they were doing for peaking at particular times, and then your first game's disappeared. So I don't know. I wonder if that sort of knocked them off their stride a little bit as well. But perhaps I'm remembering this wrong, but in the 70s, Liverpool tended to be relatively slow starters. I'm talking by Liverpool standards, not by the rest of our standards, but and then sort of come through post-Christmas and be unbeaten for about 20 games right through to the end of the season. And so I don't know that it was that big a surprise necessarily at the time. But as you say, after we'd watched that Charity Shield game, you'd be expecting an invincible season, really, because they just looked unstoppable. As I said in the previous one, I think the 78-9 team was the best Liverpool side, and that Charity Shield, it looked just like they were going to carry on from that and perhaps even get a bit better.
Absolutely.
But the start was slow.
Yeah, it was slow. 10 days Liverpool had to wait. This is Liverpool's 4th league game of the season. The arrival of Coventry City at Anfield. They've drawn 0-0 at home to Bolton in the midweek after the opening round of fixtures. Sorry, Dave, but they've beaten West Brom 3-1 at Anfield a few days later. They have played the 2 legs of the League Cup second round, the Merseyside derby. Tranmere Rovers, a goalless draw at Prenton Park, 4-0 at Anfield. But 7 days prior to the arrival of Coventry, the second leg of the Tranmere game, sandwiching between these 2 league games, a 3-2 defeat at Southampton. So yeah, not a halcyon start to the season. Liverpool go into this one without the services of Alan Hansen. He's got a thigh strain. In comes it's Colin Irwin. He'd also played at the Dell the previous week. Comes in as cover. Elman Hughes has moved on to Wolves in the summer. So here we've got Colin Irwin now stepping up to be the next line in Liverpool's kind of defensive pecking order. with Adley Cohen having arrived in the summer as well. This is an unusual figure in this Liverpool team that that old Shankly saying it's the same team as last year that he would trot out in the 60s. There was an element of this at this point in time for Liverpool as well. Any interloper into this side stood out like a mile, sort of like a sore thumb, really, didn't they?
It did, yeah. I mean, you always sort of felt there were probably 12 Liverpool players. David Fairclough probably would be the additional one at this point, and then anybody else, as you say, coming in was kind of revolutionary. I mean, I seem to remember there were a lot of high hopes for Colin Irwin at one point, but I mean, when you look at that Liverpool back line at the time, Neil, Thompson, Hansen, and Alan Kennedy, I mean, how do you break into that unless somebody gets a proper injury or suspended or whatever? So I mean, it was a thankless task, and oddly enough, in the opposition side, the Coventry side, Gary Gillespie ultimately went to Liverpool, and he had to wait quite a while before he really started to establish himself. I don't know whether he ever really did, to be honest, but yeah, it was in those golden halcyon days before squad rotation, and it genuinely was a Liverpool team that picked itself, wasn't it? I suppose, to be fair, that was quite true of a lot of teams at the time, but particularly Liverpool. It was 1 to 11. That was it, and you were going to get beat.
Yeah, running down the teams there, and we'll come to Colin Irwin's contribution to this game. He does put in a fine performance in this game. As you mentioned, there's a player of substance there. And he slots in quite readily into this team. He's coming out of a very, kind of honoured Central League side that could probably hold its own, in the first division itself. The Liverpool lineup, as mentioned, Ray Clements, Phil Neal, Alan Kennedy, Phil Thompson. It's Ray Kennedy at 5, Colin Irwin in for Hansen, Dalglish, Case, Johnson, McDermott, Souness, Fairclough as the allotted substitute. On occasions, it's Steve Highway throughout this season as well. And they kind of alternate. One gets a run out in the reserves to keep fit. One sits on the bench in the number 12 shirt for the first team, and it swaps. It goes back and forward week on week. The Coventry City lineup, a young Les Seeley in goal as part of this. Roberts, McDonald, Gary Collier, an intriguing figure that we'll come to, signed at quite a high price by Coventry City, about £380,000, I think it was, but by the standards of the summer of 1979, not a huge transfer fee, but in contemporary terms across the 70s, quite massive. Would only play twice for Coventry. Big money to pay for someone who achieved, contributed so little at Highfield Road, ultimately. Jim Holton, the uncompromising Jim Holton that we'll come to as action takes place. Gary Gillespie, as mentioned. Tommy Hutchison, captain of the side in the number 7 shirt. Tommy English, who's got a name that sounds like it could be from some kind of Carry On EDL movie. But, he's the 17-year-old Tommy English. We've got Ian Ferguson, it's Powell, and Steve Hunt, who we've spoken to before on these Football Times podcasts. Blair is on the bench, not Tony. That Coventry lineup, Dave, your standout figures?
Well, the big standout is this revolutionary 3-4-3 formation that Gordon Milne has decided to apply, which back in 1979 must have been absolutely extraordinary. We played 4-4-2 basically, or 4-3-3 perhaps if you're a bit more exotic, but 3-4-3, good God, this is horrendously continental as an idea. It doesn't really survive particularly well during this game, unfortunately. But that's the big sort of surprise from it all. Tommy English, as you've mentioned, he's 17, comes in for the injured Ian Wallace. He's got a quiff that makes him look like he's about to audition for the Stray Cats. For a 17-year-old at that time, it's quite unusual.
And this is a 17-year-old. When you see the commentator refer to the 17-year-old, you're thinking he's having no problems getting his underage drinking in the local pub there either. He does look youthful, but he doesn't look 17.
That youthful now. He had a hard paper round, as they used to say. But, that Coventry side was a decent team, wasn't it? In that period, they would occasionally flirt with relegation, and then increasingly flirt with relegation as the 80s went on. But that was a good time. Gordon Milne was good, and he was always sort of one of those that was a dark horse for the England job, wasn't he? Gordon Milne, he always used to get mentioned, never quite made it through. But that was a decent team that Coventry had at that point. And they were, as you say, they were in a period where they could spend a few quid as well, which was, again, not always a standard thing with Coventry.
Yeah, very much the trailblazer, Gordon Milne. As mentioned, his 3-4-3 formation here. He'd go on to such great repute coaching in Turkey at Besiktas, and he did so well. And he was mentioned, heavily as a potential replacement for Alf Ramsey before Don Revie, took the job. Was offered the job, and then I think the FA were quite shocked that he actually took the job in many respects. But he was talked of as being kind of like part of a two-pronged coaching assault on the England job in '74 with Joe Mercer, who was obviously his mentor at Highfield Road. But intriguing formations, interesting teams, great kit. I always loved that hourglass come egg timer strip of the tram lines of Coventry's kit that would obviously crop up with the Wales kits as well and all that type of stuff. John Hough is our referee from Macclesfield, and as the game unfolds, it's quite a sedate first half, Dave. Coventry aren't massively bothered, by the Liverpool attack, and the first half kind of, it intimates to Liverpool's sluggish start to the season. I think, yes, Dalglish, puts one just wide. It is relatively one-way traffic, but there's kind of like flashes of Liverpool that we know they can be, rather than encompassing across the first half. Johnson does open the score, and Dave Johnson opens the score in 27 minutes. It takes a header, Alan Kennedy cross, the aforementioned Colin Irwin, who picks out Kennedy on the left with a fantastic pass. Johnson, it's his fourth goal in 4 league games, so he's motoring along if the collective isn't. But beyond Liverpool's kind of like efforts in front of goal and in the final third, I think a lot of this first half revolves around Coventry's impressively physical approach to the game, Dave.
It does. I mean, before I come to that, I must mention that the opening shot of the Match of the Day footage has got the League Championship trophy with its own seat in the stand at Anfield, which I think is quite impressive.
Overlooking the Kop, as Les Seeley's put through his through base. And we must mention on Coventry as well there, this 3-4-3 formation. As we're told by Jimmy Hill, they've kept 3 consecutive clean sheets going into this game with 3 different goalkeepers, Dave, as well. This is an impressive anomaly.
It is remarkable. I was trying to think who the 3 were. I guess Jim Blythe would be one.
Jim Blythe, I would have thought. Yeah.
Bill Glazy wasn't there still by that stage, was he? I think he'd packed up, but we'll have to look up for the third.
We will investigate this and bring further news.
Well, there is an absolutely. We spoke about Sammy Nelson's slide tackle in the Charity Shield that didn't work. There is a glorious slide tackle from Jim Holton that takes about 6 feet off the top of the turf and Kenny Dalglish all in one move, for which the referee just gives a free kick and walks away. And then as they take the free kick, Jim Holton just nudges Kenny Dalglish off the ball and gets booked for that, which is quite an extraordinary thing. It tells you a lot about how football in the 1970s was, but. Do go and look at that slide tackle. It's one of those things that should be in an art gallery somewhere. It's magnificent.
Along with to see that slide, John Hough turns a blind eye to that one. John Hough of Macclesfield turns a blind eye to that one. Books him for an innocuous off the ball incident instead. It's the incredulity of it all as well. Jim Holton's kind of like, what? You don't book me for this, but you book me for that. And then Tommy Hutchison's talking himself into his name going into the notepad as well.
These were the days when you had to really work hard to get a booking. And it was you'd done something really terrible. You'd virtually killed somebody to get a booking in those days. Unlike the game that we have now. But Tommy Hutchinson, he's not going to let that go. I mean, it's 20, 30 seconds. He's rattling away to the referee. No, you're wrong. And ultimately, the Macclesfield man books it. Why is it that we always used to have to know where the referee was from, and now they're trying to guide that all from us?
Yeah, absolutely. Is this what they mean by GDPR or something? you can't kind of like tell people where everyone is. I mean, that's the great thing when you kind of like you sit and watch a big match revisited, and Brian Moore's got the letter from Ted Rogers from, and he gives the address down to the actual number of the house.
73 Acacia Avenue, Burkham.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard not to Google it as well because and that's just out of curiosity. Where did that? Not that I want to kind of rip anyone off, but more where does that letter actually come from? What suburban area? What landscape has this letter arrived from? But yeah, incredible that we have to know these things. But yeah, and often they throw in their actual day job as well, which was great. Coventry for their part in this first half, beyond the bludgeoning aspect of Jim Holton against Kenny Dalglish and Tommy Hutchison talking himself into the notebook. Steve Hunt does have the ball in the back of the net twice, falling foul of the linesman's flag on both occasions. No arguments as well from Hunt. He does. I think that's the story of Coventry's attacking endeavour in this game. It does continue throughout the second half. This noting of Steve Hunt again is offside and again is offside. There's a touch of Darwin Núñez about this, of running the line. Always loved that concept of a striker just having one of those days where he cannot keep onside, and this is clearly Steve Hunt's day for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 3 or 4 occasions where he's offside, and John Motson's getting increasingly exasperated with him in the course of the second half. The second one in the first half that goes in, I think that'd be a VAR check these days, because that one looks a bit tight to be honest. But that's all you need, isn't it? You go to Anfield, you're under the cosh, you score twice, and neither of them count. I mean, that really is that's evidence that this is not going to be your day.
It's a bit demoralising, isn't it? You are not going to get many of these chances this afternoon. Yeah, for the flag to go up, and then within that, it does have that kind of sliding doors moment to it. Especially that close one. If the flag stays down, that's 1-1. At the interval rather than 1-0 down, and Coventry's luck is massively out as the second half begins. 56 minutes, Jimmy Case puts one in, and it's deflected off Barry Powell past I don't know, should we say an enigmatically peaked Les Seeley there, laying prone on the turf in front of the Kop, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. There's a rueful smile, but there's also kind of there's a resignation of, I know where this is going now.
Les Seeley with no gloves as well to continue after,
including no grease on the ball today.
And yet Ray Clements he's got a hefty pair of gloves on at the other end, so I'm not quite sure whether one half of the pitch is greasy and the other half isn't it.
I think Clements would have been sponsored on his gloves by, he'd have been getting freebies from Sondico or something like that at this point in time.
Definitely, because as we come on to a bit later on, Peter Shilton's got gloves on as well. So yes, that speaks of a bit of product placement.
Product placement is sneaking in bit by bit.
But no, it is definitely not Coventry's day. For all that Ray Kennedy has a nightmare in front of goal, because Ray Kennedy could have scored 3 or 4 goals in this game. But other than that, as you say, a hefty deflection for the second goal. There's another deflection for Dalglish's goal to make it 3. It definitely is not going to be Coventry's day under any circumstances in this one. And that second half, again, if you're all you see in Liverpool is on television, they are pretty sparkling again in that second half. Although they get a slice of luck with the goals, but if all you've seen so far is Liverpool in the Charity Shield and then Liverpool versus Coventry City, there doesn't look to be a great deal wrong with Liverpool, to be perfectly honest, at this point. So it's a surprise that they would have lost to Southampton and dropped a couple of points elsewhere. They look in pretty good nick to me. And then Jimmy Case towards the end, there's a nice turn and a 30-yarder that thunders off the bar that would have been
that bounces pretty close to the goal line. I think there's another kind of that would have been one for goal line technology. That one, a potential goal of the season there, just missed out. But Kenny Dalglish makes it 3. It's another deflection, which comes off Davy Johnson, which is unfortunate for him because Davy Johnson will go on and score the 4th goal. So I think in this day and age, he'd have claimed a hat-trick without a shadow of a doubt. And I think even John Motson at that point in time in September 1979 is of the mind that Johnson could claim that one.
Yeah, I mean, David Johnson, again, John Motson says about he's had his critics, David Johnson, but he can score goals. I thought he was a great player, David Johnson. Highly underrated. I mean, again, his timing, I suppose, doesn't do any favours at Liverpool because he's just sort of before Ian Rush, and Ian Rush sucks up all the light, doesn't he? Really. But David Johnson scored loads and loads of goals. Scored loads for Everton, for Ipswich, and then for Liverpool. I thought he was a terrific player for them. And we'll come on again in a future one and see Liverpool without David Johnson. We're not quite the same force in that season.
Absolutely, yeah. No, David Johnson was a fantastic striker. Kept David Fairclough out of this side on a regular basis. And yeah, through certainly 78, 79, 79, 80, he was scoring goals for fun. Would go on and win an England recall. Scored a couple of goals against Argentina, at Wembley. Wherever he went, whatever level he was playing at, goals were never far away with David Johnson. But yeah, he falls between two eras. It's kind of like, well, there's Kenny Dalglish, who absorbed so much light in this Liverpool team that he's playing with. Kevin Keegan has been a predecessor, and then rushes to come. So he falls between a lot of eras and a lot of players that absorb so much light. But Dave Johnson, a magnificent player and a really wonderful human being as well. I got to meet him, and just such a fella, such a brilliant fella as well. And sadly missed. But yeah, that second half, it is more like Liverpool at Wembley against Arsenal. They are turning on the party pieces. Les Seeley does well to save from McDermott. There's flowing one-touch moves. There's like a light bulb moment, and it's kind of like, yes, we're stuttering along, but then bang, this is what we can do, and this is what this game, is very striking for. There's one moment where Gary Gillespie takes a heavy hit and is winded, drops to the turf, and needs a little bit of time to compose himself, shall we say. But yeah, this is kind of like a result that is very much a kind of, I don't know, a statement of, actually, we're not all that bad after all. Yet, there are still some issues to come for Liverpool. Couple of weeks down the line, there's still some hit and miss results to come, shall we say. We will be touching on Liverpool again in the next subsection module, and that's their trip to Nottingham Forest at the end of September. And just before we move on from this Liverpool performance, I'll just give you a rundown of the results that lead up to that Forest game post Coventry. There's a week after Coventry's arrival at Anfield, there's a 1-1 draw at Ellen Road against Leeds United. There is the European Cup first leg at Anfield, a 2-1 win over a ludicrously talented Dinamo Tbilisi, where Liverpool do well to win by a narrow margin and concede an away goal. They are held to another Anfield goalless draw, this time by Norwich City. They win 3-1 against Chesterfield in the third round of the League Cup. And then it will be off to Forest, and then we will touch on what comes after that. But there's another set of another set of results that speaks of this kind of inconsistent start to Liverpool's season.
It does, yeah. As I say, I mean, it wasn't unusual for Liverpool to start a bit sluggishly, and it is always that I don't think these teams that have dynasties get enough credit for it. Liverpool, 70s and 80s, Manchester United in the 90s, 2000s, Manchester City over the last sort of 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it is. Because, you win something. And it's just human nature to think, yeah, to use Ferguson's phrase, we've climbed the mountain, we're at the top. This is fantastic. And some people are just going to think, well, I've achieved everything I want to achieve now. Or like Kevin Keegan and Ray Clements did at Liverpool, in different times. Well, I can't do anything else here now. I've got to go and try and do it somewhere else. To keep that appetite and that hunger to keep on winning, and particularly in the league. I mean, it's one thing to raise yourself for the European Cup or for the FA Cup or whatever, but 42 games, it's a hell of a slog to still come out on top at the end of all of that. What Liverpool did in that period and what United and City have done subsequently, I think is just absolutely extraordinary, and it gets nowhere near the credit that it deserves, because it doesn't, in just as a human being, it doesn't make sense that you can carry on doing that time and time again, particularly when, having done it once, everybody wants to shoot you down. That's everybody raises their game against you. Everybody wants to beat you. So within that pressure, having already got those medals on the sideboard at home and all of that, it's an extraordinary thing to just keep coming and coming and coming again. Yeah, they are amazing individuals led by an incredible manager who, Bob Paisley, picks up a couple of trophies as well at this game. The manager of the year, and he gets one to keep himself, like the Jules Rimet trophy with Brazil.
Absolutely, he's won it 3 times in 4 years, and they've given one to keep. Yeah, absolutely. A chastening day for Coventry City in the end, but there was much promise. A little bit of investigation over their goalkeepers. Yes, it was Jim Blythe who was the other goalkeeper. The forgotten Stephen Murcott. I have no recollection.
Still forgotten, I'm afraid. Sorry, Stephen, if you're listening.
Forgotten. So yes, absolutely. They, along with Les Seeley, that was the 3 goalkeepers with 3 consecutive clean sheets, 1 each. On this this particular afternoon, the other game of the day, the match of the day, was covering Manchester United's 3-0 win at Aston Villa. Impressive performance, a fine set of goals, a telling contribution from the perennial Manchester United's late 1970s, early 1980s substitute Ashley Grimes. Wins the penalty for the second goal, scores the third. Not a great day for Jimmy Rimmer. Aston Villa are a little bit wounded at this point in time. They've lost Andy Gray. John Gibman's made off for Goodison Park. Not in a great place. Aston Villa, it's storm clouds. Surely the rest of the certainly the early 1980s, are going to be a bit of a basket case for them.
They're going to be relegated without a shadow of a doubt, clearly. It's all over. Ron Saunders has lost the plot. He's got to go. The Ashley Grimes penalty win, it is very definitely winning a penalty. I mean, it is one of the most extravagant dives you could ever wish to see. It's fantastic. He takes off, virtually launches himself into the spectators. It's a work of art.
It really
his goal at the near post. I mean, yes, Jimmy Rimmer will be disappointed with that, as they say, but it's a hefty shot that he finds there to beat him. So United, having seen them in the game at Southampton a couple of weeks earlier, they're starting to find a bit of swagger there.
They are finding a bit of swagger. There's high hopes in the national press at least, that the beloved Manchester United will be put in the title challenge. Results that day have put, where are we now? We are Nottingham Forest at the top of the table, and I think 5 points ahead of Liverpool, who are in, I think it is 7th position. But, nothing, only 2 points clear of bottom of the table Derby County, I think, at this point in time, Dave. But it's still very early days, without a shadow of a doubt. There is, going back to the back page headlines, for this particular week in the build-up to the game, the Steve Daly saga rumbles on. Manchester City are now willing to break the £1 million barrier to take him to Main Road. Aston Villa are still amenable to a part exchange deal that may or may not involve players that are on what seems to be a lengthening transfer list, shall we say, Dave, at Villa Park. Wolves are also interested in Dave Thomas as part of Everton's continuing interest in Daly as well. Mike Pedgic is another that Aston Villa are considering a move for, with the loss of John Gibbon. West Brom, your own West Brom, Dave, they're being linked with the one-to-way Everton striker Bob Latchford. By the end of the week, Daly will sign for City for a ludicrous £1,460,000 and £500 British record transfer fee until Wolves actually get hold of Gray. So at this point in time, the Villa game against Manchester United, Gray's still a Villa player, but not for long. Dave, anything in particular that piqued your interest in the back pages?
It's the transfer thing, isn't it? I mean, the way in which it escalated so incredibly quickly. I mean, at the start of '79, Albion miraculously broke the transfer record, purely to avoid a tax bill, but that's another story. And they paid £516,000 for David Mills, which was way over the odds then, but it was £516,000, and that seemed a hell of a lot of money then. And then all of a sudden, as soon as Trevor Francis goes, everything goes mental after Trevor Francis has broken the £1 million barrier. We talked about Kevin Reeves, I think, in the last one, over £1 million. Steve Daly never had an England cap. I think it's 1.4 in the end that he goes. This is just insane, isn't it? Really. And this is where there is just mad inflation of transfer fees at a time when there's not a huge amount of money in the game in terms of, we're not okay, there's a little bit of sponsorship beginning to come in. There's, we're seeing executive boxes built in football grounds and whatnot. But a lot of clubs are rebuilding their stadiums without any help from anywhere else. They're having to find the money for that themselves. And you can see that there's a lot of football clubs stoking up a lot of trouble for themselves at this point. That's going to come back and haunt them in 2 or 3 years' time.
Yeah, there's a lot of clubs operating under the illusion that the bubble will not burst at this point in time, without a shadow of a doubt. One last one from the back pages for you, and again, West Brom links to it. We spoke in the last subsection module about West Brom not letting Laurie Cunningham's registration go until they received the first sizable lump sum payment from Real Madrid for the services of Laurie Cunningham. This has now been released. West Brom have had the money, which they'd already spent on Peter Barnes. There's your merry-go-round and the potential for a very, very, very vulnerable bubble to burst. Real Madrid refused to release Cunningham for England's upcoming European Championship qualifier at Wembley against Denmark. The days when clubs can still tell national bodies to sling their hook, Dave.
Yes, what great times they were. What great times they were. It just seems so strange now, doesn't it? I mean, we've had these international breaks for I don't know how long now, 20 years or something, 30 years perhaps. I can't remember when they came in. You go back to those days, and of course, the Alf Ramsey particularly suffered with this, with Don Revie never releasing players and Brian Clough not releasing players and stuff. You'd play a blood and thunder first division game on a Saturday. The people that could still walk would eventually report for England duty on the Sunday afternoon. They'd play for the country on a Wednesday night, and then they'd be back playing in the first division again on the following Saturday. I mean, it seems extraordinary now that kind of thing went on. But I have to say, I'm all for it, frankly.
Absolutely. We want a bit of needle in our football here, without a shadow of a doubt. Dave, that's been a joy to do once again. Subsection 1.03, Liverpool 4, Coventry City 0. An unremittingly Liverpool type of afternoon that will demoralise the rest of the division before May has arrived, without a shadow of a doubt. Manchester United with high hopes for themselves and a high opinion of themselves, shall we say, at Villa Park, but a deserved set of headlines for them over a fine performance at Villa Park. Do join us again for the next module of 1979-80 Revisited via the Gola knapsack or hold all of your boys to hell of a beating. Thank you and goodbye.